In the healing space, the spiritual space, the word ego gets thrown about constantly, right? Like you see the word ego, and I think we can have a misrepresentation of what ego actually represents. For example, my definition of ego, I saw the word ego as self-obsessed or overconfident, or someone. I saw it as a nasty word, almost like someone who doesn't feel for someone else. It's their ego, that what they think about themselves. They put themselves over anyone else. Um, and I think that's maybe because of the relation to the word egotistical. You think of someone overconfident, or maybe spiteful, or harsh, or whatever the connotations that you have to these words. When in reality, ego is completely different. We all have an ego. Our brain is our ego. Our mind is our ego. Our thought is our ego. Let me break that down for you. So when we're born, we come into the world and we're pure. We haven't had any experience of life. We are pure, we are whole. The further along, the more we grow up, the more experiences we have, right? Of course, whether that be at home, at school, with parents, with friends, whatever it is. And we learn from these experiences. Our brain processes these experiences and makes sense of these experiences. So if something's not obvious, our brain makes sense of it in a certain way, and that creates our reality. We've made sense of that experience as our own, and our perception may not truly represent what the reality was. So when you think of ego is simply thoughts, because when we come into the world, we don't have thoughts. We don't have these thoughts that hold us back. For example, a common thought or belief system that I think everyone on the planet can relate to in some way is the belief of not feeling enough, not feeling worthy of love, not feeling enough as you are as a person. And that's shaped from experiences. When we are a baby, we don't have these thoughts of, oh, I need to do this to gain love. And it might be more obscure. Your thoughts might not be that obvious, like, I'm doing these things for love. But for example, for me, I had a father that was harsh and critical, and perfection was an expectation. So if I didn't achieve something, I'd shame myself, and that was a learnt pattern. And that's how I wasn't necessarily thinking I need to do these things to be enough. But if once I challenge these thoughts and challenge, why do I feel like I need to do this, or why should I do this? Because even when we say the words need and should, there's an element of shame to that, because why should you have to do something? You don't need to do anything to gain love. You know, once you can give yourself the love, you don't need to do anything for your own love. So ego is thought. And when I say thought, there's different types of thought. I think there's conscious and unconscious thought. So there's thought where, you go, I'm going to go to the shop. That is more conscious. You're making a decision, you're planning. And even in these conscious thoughts, they can be affected by ego. But something as simple as that, I'll go to the shop and get bread. Like, that's a pretty conscious thought. It's not come from ego. It's not come from the programming. It's kind of come from a need of yours during that day. You need food, you need to eat dinner. Whereas thoughts that are unconscious, we have thoughts that we don't actively think. So when you think, I need to go to the shop, or I'm going to go to the shop and get bread, that's a thought that you've consciously created. Whereas we have thoughts, probably a good percent of our thoughts, maybe 80 to 90% of our thoughts every day, come from this unconscious space. We don't consciously create these words and these sentences. You know, we all have this, we know the concept of intrusive thoughts, like a thought that maybe makes you feel uncomfortable because you feel like you shouldn't be thinking that. And it's a thought that you didn't consciously create. It just came into your mind. And I think ego is that. Once we start thinking unconsciously, those thoughts that are unconscious, that surface, I think that represents the ego, because it's the thoughts that come from subconscious. And what is the subconscious made out of? It's made from the experiences that you've had throughout your life. It comes from the lens that you've had in your life. So when we look at the subconscious, we can realize all of this, the thoughts, the beliefs, the feelings that are created in this space, all come from the experiences that I've had in my life. And these experiences aren't reality. Not the experiences, but your perception of the experience. Because if I say to someone, one of my friends texts me and it's his birthday, and he says, this is what we're gonna do, and I say, I don't wanna do that, I'm not coming. If he has a belief system about him being unlovable, or a wound of rejection, or a wound of abandonment, that might trigger that. That's come from the unconscious. These are feelings in the body that are not my response, because my reality is, I just said I don't want to do that. And it might not even be personal about him. It might just be, I don't want to do what they're doing because that activity doesn't align with what I want to do in my life. But through his perspective, through his lens, because of what he experienced growing up, he could perceive it in a number of ways. He could perceive it as a rejection, if that's what he's experienced as a child, rejection from parents. He could receive it as, oh, he doesn't want to be around me, there's something wrong with me, why doesn't my friend want to be with me on my birthday? Make him feel bad about himself, his self-esteem, again represented on past experience. Or he could see at face value for what reality is. Okay, he doesn't want to come, that's okay. That has nothing to do with my worth, my value, me as a person. That's his decision, I respect his decision. I'm going to do what I want to do anyway because it's my life. So when we can begin to see the ego, because the ego is simply those thoughts that surface, that aren't consciously thought by yourself, you know. And I think as well, ego, we can create ego as enemy, like see it as an enemy. All that ego is a light for you to see what needs healing. You know, these thoughts will come up, but our response to them truly creates how we feel. Our thoughts don't have to be us, we don't need to associate with us. And once you can distance from them and just see yourself as, I'm infinite awareness. I am infinite awareness, I am not my thoughts. I am this that is observing these thoughts, that is observing this body, the feelings in this body, the sensations in this body. Because once we associate with thoughts, we can get all the feelings that come with it, the guilt, the shame, the anger, the frustration, the hopelessness. When in reality, those thoughts aren't us, they're just shaped on experiences that we had as children, that we perceived in a certain way, we made sense of in a certain way. They're not truly us. You know, we are defined by what we do, that we're more our actions and energy than our thoughts. Our thoughts are useful, you know, we can plan ahead and we can use our mind and our thoughts to create a life and to plan for what we want to do. You know, I might plan, okay, later I'm going to go to the gym. That doesn't have any emotional feeling behind it. It's just fact. That's what I'm planning to do today. We can choose, okay, I'm going to go and see my family, and that's great. Like, we can use the mind to do things, but when we allow the mind to control us, that's when we become a slave to the mind, a slave to the ego, and all the ego wants is comfort. Ego craves comfort. Ego doesn't want to change. It's scary for the ego to lose itself. It clings on to itself. So whenever you seek comfort and you feel this need for comfort, there's probably an element of ego behind that, because that is all that the ego wants. The ego doesn't want to change. And when we can begin to see the ego for what it is, and change the ego, not change, but go against the ego, that's when we can truly begin to make meaningful change in our life. And it's a process, you know. It's a spiral. I think healing's actually a spiral. Like, you think you heal things and you come back and heal it deeper, and you come back and heal it deeper. And that's just part of life, you know, like this journey doesn't end. And there's something beautiful in that. There's always somewhere to grow and somewhere to learn. So I think if we can change our perception of ego and see ego for what it is, and not associate me as ego and have the two intertwined, have them as separate entities, then we can really make meaningful change in our life. So I hope that helps. Like, maybe in the comments if you have any questions or anything, then fire, and I'll answer any. But I think that's an important distinction to make. So yeah, hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you again tomorrow.